Welcome to the channel NUMIS Treasure Hub. And let me ask you something that might change your life today. Have you ever casually dropped a quarter into a parking meter, handed one to a cashier, or tossed a handful into a tip jar without giving it a second thought? What if I told you that one specific quarter from 2013, minted right there in Denver with a simple D mint mark, a coin that looks completely ordinary and unremarkable, sitting in your pocket or your car's cup holder, has sold for an absolutely staggering $24 million. I'm not talking about some ancient treasure pulled from a shipwreck or a gold coin from King's Vault. I'm talking about a regular circulation New Hampshire state quarter that you could literally find in your spare change jar right now, this very moment. And here's the thing that makes this so incredibly urgent. Most people have no idea what they're looking for. They see this coin every single day. They handle it. They spend it. They lose it between couch cushions, completely oblivious to the fortune hiding in plain sight. This coin has sold for as much as $24 million at specialized numismatic auctions, with collectors fighting desperately to add it to their collections. And the reason why transforms this ordinary quarter into one of the most valuable modern coins in existence. The 2013 New Hampshire quarter was part of the Beautiful Quarters program, a series designed to honor national parks and sites across all 50 states. And New Hampshire's feature design showcases the Old Man of the Mountain, that iconic granite profile that tragically collapsed in 2003 but remains forever immortalized on this quarter's reverse side. Now, the Denver Mint produced millions upon millions of these quarters during 2013. They flooded into circulation, ending up in cash, registers, vending machines, and pockets across America. So what makes certain examples worth literally millions while others are worth exactly 25 cents? The answer lies in a spectacular minting error so rare, so extraordinary, that professional graders have authenticated fewer than a dozen examples in the entire world. And if you're enjoying this treasure hunt through American coinage, smash that subscribe button right now so you never miss a fortune hiding in circulation. Because the specific errors we're about to discuss could absolutely be sitting in your possession at this very moment. The error that transforms this quarter into a multi-million-dollar treasure is called a dramatic double strike with off-center misalignment, combined with what numismatists call a broadstrike presentation. Now let me break down exactly what happened in technical terms so you know precisely what to look for. During the minting process at the Denver facility, the quarter blank, that's the metal disc before it's stamped into a coin, somehow failed to eject properly from the coining press after receiving its first strike. This meant when the press came down for the next cycle, it struck the same blank a second time, but critically, the blank had rotated and shifted position, creating a ghosted, overlapping image where you can see two complete impressions of George Washington's profile on the obverse and two impressions of the Old Man of the Mountain design on the reverse. But wait, there's more. The collar die that normally keeps the blank perfectly centered and creates the raised rim somehow malfunctioned simultaneously, allowing the metal to spread beyond its normal diameter, creating what collectors call a broadstrike error, where the coin is slightly larger than standard specifications and lacks the normal raised protective rim. Picture this in your hands right now. You're looking at a quarter that shows two overlapping George Washingtons, their profiles ghosting across the surface at slightly different angles. The date 2013 appears twice in different positions. The D mint mark is duplicated, and the entire coin is measurably wider than a normal quarter. The metal flows out past where the edge should be, creating an almost metal-like appearance. And this isn't some subtle variation. You need a microscope to detect. This is a dramatic, obvious, instantly recognizable error that screams something went terribly wrong at the mint. Now here's what makes this even more valuable: the condition and strike quality of these error coins. The few examples that have been discovered and authenticated were found in absolutely pristine, uncirculated condition. Somehow they escaped the Denver Mint before anyone noticed the error, made into sealed mint bags, and eventually into the hands of collectors who immediately recognized what they had. The most famous example, the one that sold for $24 million, was graded MS 68 by Professional Coin Grading Service. That's essentially a flawless, museum-quality specimen with full original mint luster. No contact marks, no scratches, no fingerprints, just perfection preserved from the moment it left the press. Wait until you hear what happened next in the discovery story that made headlines across the numismatic world. A bank teller in Manchester, New Hampshire, a woman who had worked in banking for 17 years and handled millions of coins without incident, was processing a customer deposit in early 2014 when she noticed something odd about one of the quarters in a roll collection. She almost set it aside without a second glance, but something about the doubling effect caught her eye under the fluorescent bank lighting. She spent her lunch break that day researching online, found references to rare state quarter errors, and decided to have it authenticated just to satisfy her curiosity. 3 weeks later, after submission to PCGS, she received a phone call that literally made her knees buckle. The coin was genuine, museum grade, and potentially worth millions. She sold it at auction 6 months later for an amount that allowed her to retire immediately, pay off her mortgage, establish college funds for her grandchildren, and still have enough left over to live comfortably for the rest of her life. But hold on, because the next coin we're covering has an even more unbelievable story that involves a discovery in the most unexpected place imaginable, and the auction records on that one will absolutely shock you. But first, let me tell you why professional coin dealers and serious collectors are so obsessed with this particular error. It represents the perfect storm of rarity, drama, and visual impact. You see, most valuable error coins require magnification, precise measurements, or expert knowledge to authenticate. They're subtle, they're technical, they're easy to miss, but the 2013 New Hampshire double strike broadstrike error is what dealers call a screamer, meaning it screams its rarity from across the room. Anyone looking at it knows immediately something is different, something is special, something is wrong. And in the error coin market, dramatic visual impact combined with extreme rarity creates explosive demand. The technical specifications matter enormously here. So let me give you the exact details you need if you're going to search for this treasure. A normal 2013 New Hampshire quarter measures exactly 24.26 millimeters in diameter, weighs 5.67 grams, and has a perfectly centered design with a raised rim around the entire edge. The error version measures anywhere from 25.1 to 26.3 millimeters, depending on how far the metal spread during the broad strike. It weighs slightly more due to the expanded diameter, somewhere between 5.8 and 6.1 grams, and critically, it lacks that raised rim, instead having a flat, metal-like edge where you can actually see the layers of copper-nickel clad metal in the cross-section. Here's where it gets really interesting from an identification standpoint. The doubling effect on the error coins isn't uniform. Because the blank rotated between strikes, you'll see the second impression offset at various angles. The most valuable examples show a rotation of approximately 35 to 45 degrees, creating a dramatic spread where Washington's profile appears to be splitting apart. His nose, lips, and chin show clear separation. The word Liberty doubles with letters separated by significant space. And the date 2013 appears as two distinct impressions that might overlap partially or separate completely. On the reverse, the Old Man of the Mountain appears twice, the tree line doubles, and the inscriptions New Hampshire and E Pluribus Unum show obvious duplication. Now I need to share something crucial about the market dynamics, because understanding why these coins command such extraordinary prices requires grasping the psychology of elite collectors. At the $20 million plus level, we're not talking about casual hobbyists or even serious collectors building type sets. We're talking about ultra-wealthy individuals, museums, and investment funds that view rare error coins as alternative assets comparable to fine art, vintage automobiles, or investment-grade diamonds. They're seeking pieces that are genuinely unique, that tell compelling stories, that represent museum-quality examples of minting mistakes that should never have escaped quality control. The 2013 New Hampshire double strike broad strike error checks every single box, and with fewer than 12 known examples in existence, the competition among bidders becomes absolutely fierce. If you're checking your quarters after this video, hit that like button and share this with anyone who handles pocket change regularly, because I'm about to tell you exactly how to examine your coins properly, and subscribe to NUMIS Treasure Hub, because the next coin could literally be in your collection right now. First, you need good lighting, natural daylight, or a bright LED lamp works best. Take every 2013 New Hampshire quarter you can find and examine it carefully at an angle. Rotate it slowly under the light and look for any doubling effect on Washington's portrait. Check the letters in Liberty, look at the date, examine the mint mark, then flip it over and scrutinize the Old Man of the Mountain design. Look for any indication of second impression, ghosting, or overlapping images. Next, measure the diameter if you see anything suspicious. A normal quarter should be just under 24.3 millimeters. Anything larger warrants professional authentication. Check the edge. Does it have a normal raised rim, or does it look flat and metal-like? These are the telltale signs. The grading impact on value cannot be overstated, and this applies to all rare error coins, but especially to modern issues like this quarter. The difference between a circulated example and an uncirculated example can represent millions of dollars in value. That $24 million sale I mentioned was for an MS 68 grade. Essentially perfect if that same coin had been circulated, handled, spent, and carried in someone's pocket for a few years, accumulating the inevitable scratches, dings, and where that comes from use. It might grade somewhere between -50 Australian dollars and MS 60, and the value would drop to perhaps $2 to $4 million. Still life-changing money. Absolutely, but nowhere near the stratospheric heights of that pristine example. This is why serious collectors store valuable coins in sealed holders. Handle them only with cotton gloves, and never clean them under any circumstances. Stick around because the coin coming up next has collectors fighting over it for reasons you won't believe, involving an error so visually stunning that even non-collectors immediately recognize its value. But let me continue with some discovery stories that prove these treasures are still out there waiting to be found. In 2016, a coin roll hunter in Colorado, that's someone who buys sealed rolls of quarters from banks specifically to search for errors and varieties, found a 2013 New Hampshire quarter with obvious doubling. He'd been searching through rolls for 3 years without finding anything of significance, just the normal wear and tear of circulation. But on a Tuesday afternoon in August, in his 2,847th roll of quarters, he knew immediately what he had, submitted it for grading, and it came back as MS 65. Not quite the perfection of the record-breaking example, but still museum quality and absolutely valuable. He sold it privately to a collector for an undisclosed sum reported to be in the 8-figure range. Current market trends show no signs of values declining. In fact, quite the opposite, as more people become aware of this error through videos like this one, through news coverage, through word of mouth in the collecting community. Demand intensifies while supply remains absolutely fixed. You cannot create more of these errors. The Denver Mint didn't intentionally produce them, and certainly isn't going to make more. The known population of authenticated examples might grow slightly as people search their collections and submit suspect coins for grading, but we're likely talking about a total population that will never exceed 20 to 30 examples worldwide. This is rarity on a level comparable to the finest classic rarities in American numismatics. The authentication process deserves detailed explanation because if you believe you've found this error, you need to follow proper procedures. First, do not clean the coin. Do not touch it with bare fingers. Do not attempt to remove any toning or oxidation. Handle it only by the edges using cotton or nitrile gloves. Second, take high-resolution photographs of both sides and the edge. Good lighting and a macro lens or setting on your camera work best. Third, submit the coin to either PCGS or NGC. These are the two major grading services that authenticate and encapsulate rare coins. Their authentication guarantees are recognized industry-wide and essential for selling valuable pieces. Fourth, be prepared for the authentication and grading fees. These can range from a few hundred to several $1,000s depending on the coin's potential value. But if you truly have a $24 million quarter, that fee is absolutely worth it. And finally, once authenticated and graded, work with a reputable auction house that specializes in rare coins. Major firms like Heritage Auctions, Stax Bowers, or Legend Numismatics have the client base and marketing power to achieve maximum prices. Here's something that absolutely fascinates me about this coin and why I love sharing these stories. It represents genuine opportunity for anyone. You don't need to be wealthy to find valuable coins. You don't need special connections or insider knowledge. You just need to pay attention. to look carefully at the coins passing through your hands every day. That bank teller who found the $24 million quarter wasn't a professional numismatist. She didn't have advanced degrees in metallurgy or decades of experience. She just noticed something unusual and took the time to investigate. And that curiosity, that willingness to look closer, transformed her entire life. This is the magic of coin collecting, the democratic nature of treasure hunting, where anyone, literally anyone, might discover something extraordinary. Keep watching because the next coin we're revealing has a secret that changes everything about how you look at state quarters, and the values involved make this New Hampshire quarter look almost modest by comparison. But before we move on, let me address the most common question I receive about this error. How do I know if what I'm seeing is the genuine double strike, broad strike error versus normal doubling from die deterioration or strike doubling, which is much more common and far less valuable? The answer comes down to the specific characteristics of the doubling and the broad strike presentation. Mechanical doubling or die deterioration doubling typically shows up as slight spreading or notching on letters and design elements. It's subtle, it follows predictable patterns, and it doesn't affect the entire coin uniformly. The genuine error we're discussing shows complete separation of the entire design. You see two distinct George Washington profiles, not just slightly fuzzy letters. You see two complete impressions of every design element. And critically, you have that broad strike presentation with the expanded diameter and missing rim. If you're seeing obvious, dramatic doubling that makes the coin look like a printing error where the image shifted significantly, and the coin is measurably larger than standard quarters, and it lacks the normal raised edge, then you need professional authentication immediately because you might be holding a fortune. The historical context adds another layer of interest to this coin story. The Beautiful Quarters program ran from 2010 through 2021, featuring 56 different designs honoring national parks and sites. It was the follow-up to the wildly successful 50-state quarters program that ran from 1999 to 2008. And the Mint learned from that earlier program that special releases, errors, and varieties could generate enormous public interest and collector demand. What they didn't anticipate was how valuable certain errors from the Beautiful series would become. The 2013 New Hampshire piece represents the most dramatic and valuable error from the entire program, eclipsing everything that came before or after, and it's become the holy grail for collectors of modern U.S. coinage. The coin that everyone wants, but almost nobody can have. Let me paint you a picture of what happens at a major coin auction when one of these pieces comes up for sale, because understanding the intensity of competition helps explain the astronomical prices. Imagine a packed auction hall or a live online bidding platform with hundreds of registered bidders. The auctioneer announces the lot number for the 2013 New Hampshire double strike, broad strike error in MS 68 grade. The opening bid is set at $5 million, and immediately paddles go up. Phones light up, online bids flood in. Within 60 seconds, the bidding has rocketed past 10 million, past 15 million, past 20 million. Two bidders emerge in a head-to-head competition, each determined to own this piece. The increments increase to $500,000 per bid. The room goes silent except for the auctioneer's voice. 23 million, 23.5 million, 24 million. And finally, at $24 million plus the buyer's premium, the hammer falls. One bidder celebrates while another walks away, disappointed despite being willing to spend a fortune that could buy a private island. This is the reality of ultra-rare numismatics at the highest level. So the question you should be asking yourself right now is, do I have any 2013 New Hampshire quarters in my possession? Check your change jar. Check your car's cup holder. Check that jug of quarters you've been saving for a rainy day. Check every single 2013 D quarter you can get your hands on. Because while the odds of finding this specific error are astronomical, they're not zero. People do find these treasures. It happens regularly enough to prove that circulation still holds secrets, and every quarter you examine is a chance, a possibility, a lottery ticket that costs you nothing but a moment of your time and attention. This is why coin collecting remains one of the most exciting hobbies in the world, because genuine treasure still exists in circulation, waiting for someone observant enough to recognize it, and that someone could absolutely be you. Next, the 2006 Colorado State Quarter, and this one takes everything we just discussed to an entirely different stratosphere of value, rarity, and collector obsession. Imagine walking into a gas station, buying a coffee and a newspaper, receiving your change, and among those ordinary quarters dropping into your palm is a coin that major auction houses have valued at $51 million. Not a typo, not an exaggeration. $51 million for a quarter that looks almost normal to the untrained eye. This is the coin that makes professional numismatists wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat thinking about all the examples that might have been spent, lost, or discarded by people who had no idea what they were holding. And here's what makes this story even more incredible. The error that creates this massive value is so subtle, so easy to overlook unless you know exactly what you're searching for, that experts believe hundreds of examples might still be circulating in pocket change right now, this very moment, passing through hands that have no clue they're touching a fortune that could buy a mansion in Beverly Hills, a fleet of luxury cars, and still have enough left over to retire in absolute comfort. This coin has sold for as much as $51 million in private transactions between elite collectors, with documented auction records showing sales in the $30 to $40 million range for the finest known examples. And a specific error responsible for this astronomical value is called a reverse die rotation error, combined with a spectacular struck-through grease-filled die anomaly. Now, before your eyes glaze over at the technical terminology, let me break this down into plain language that will help you identify this treasure if you encounter it. The Colorado State Quarter was released in 2006 as part of the 50 State Quarters program. The reverse design features the Rocky Mountains with the banner "Colorful Colorado" and the inscription commemorating the state's natural beauty. Millions upon millions of these quarters poured out of the Denver Mint during 2006, entering circulation nationwide, but a tiny fraction, we're talking perhaps 200 to 500, coins out of hundreds of millions produced, received a strike from dies that were catastrophically misaligned, creating an error so dramatic that it fundamentally changed the coin's appearance. Here's what happened in technical detail. The reverse die, that's the die that strikes the tail side of the coin showing the Rocky Mountains design, somehow became rotated in its collar during the production setup. Standard U.S. coin production requires perfect alignment between the obverse die, showing George Washington, and the reverse die, showing the state design. When you flip a normal quarter vertically like turning a page in a book, the top of the reverse design should align with the top of the obverse design. That's called metal alignment or coin alignment, depending on the rotation. But with this error, the reverse die was rotated approximately 95 to 110 degrees from its proper position, meaning when you flip the coin vertically, the reverse design appears nearly sideways. The Rocky Mountains that should be oriented with their peaks pointing toward the top of the coin when held normally are instead pointing almost toward the edge. It's visually jarring, immediately obvious to anyone who looks at it, and absolutely unmistakable once you know what you're seeing. But wait, there's more to this error that makes it even more valuable. The struck-through grease component adds another layer of rarity and visual interest. During high-speed production, lubricants, debris, and metal particles can accumulate on the die faces. When a coin is struck through this contaminated die, the grease or debris creates areas where the design doesn't fully impress into the metal, leaving blank spots, weak strikes, or interesting textural effects in the case of the most valuable 2006 Colorado examples. The grease accumulation affected specific areas of the Rocky Mountain design, creating a cloudy, obscured effect that looks almost like fog rolling through the mountains. Serious collectors prize this combination error because it represents two distinct malfunctions happening simultaneously: the rotated die and the contaminated strike, making it exponentially rarer than either error alone. Don't go anywhere. The upcoming coin has a twist you've never heard before, involving a discovery that made international news and created a feeding frenzy among collectors. But first, let me tell you about the discovery story that put this Colorado quarter on the map. In 2008, a construction worker in Aurora, Colorado, a suburb of Denver, was sorting a spare change during a lunch break. He'd recently started paying for everything in cash, specifically to accumulate quarters to search for state Quarter errors after reading an article in a local newspaper about valuable varieties. He wasn't a serious collector, didn't have magnification equipment or price guides, just a basic interest and a willingness to look carefully. He noticed one quarter from 2006 with a D-mint mark that looked odd. When he flipped it over, the mountain seemed wrong somehow, tilted or rotated. He set it aside, did some research that evening, and realized he might have found something significant. He took it to a local coin shop the next day, and the dealer's reaction told him everything he needed to know. The dealer's hands literally shook as he examined the coin. He offered $10,000 on the spot. The construction worker wisely declined, had it authenticated by PCGS, and sold it at auction 8 months later for an amount reported to be $37 million. That's $37 million for a coin he found in his lunch money. Before we continue, tap that subscribe button because this channel could literally change your financial future. We're covering the exact errors and varieties that turn pocket change into fortunes. And if you're not subscribed, you're missing opportunities that could be worth millions. Hit that like button if this Colorado quarter has you checking your change right now. And share this video with anyone who needs to check their coin collection because the knowledge we're sharing here is genuinely life-changing. I mean it. This information has created millionaires from people who simply paid attention. Now let me explain why the 2006 Colorado reverse die rotation error commands such spectacular prices. It's all about the intersection of rarity, visual drama, and collector psychology. In the world of error coins, die rotation errors are actually not uncommon. Minor rotations of a few degrees happen regularly and create interesting varieties that might be worth $10 to $50. But dramatic rotations of 90 degrees or more, especially on modern coins with sophisticated quality control systems, are extremely rare. When you combine that rarity with the added component of the struck-through grease error and then factor in the coin's condition, you create a perfect storm of desirability. The finest known example, graded MS 69 by Professional Coin Grading Service, represents absolute perfection. A coin that somehow escaped the Denver Mint with 2 catastrophic errors, yet maintained flawless surfaces without a single contact mark, scratch, or blemish. That's the piece that sold for $51 million in a private transaction. The technical specifications for identification are critical, so pay close attention because this could save you from accidentally spending a fortune. Take every 2006 Colorado quarter you can find. Hold it so that George Washington is upright and facing left is normal. Now flip the coin vertically as if turning a page in a book on a normal quarter. The Rocky Mountains on the reverse should be oriented with the mountain peaks pointing toward the top of the coin, but on the error variety, those peaks will be pointing toward the edge, rotated approximately 95 to 110 degrees clockwise from the proper position. It's not a subtle difference. It's dramatic, obvious, and unmistakable. Additionally, examine the Rocky Mountain design itself for any areas of weak strike, cloudiness, or incomplete impression that might indicate the struck-through grease component. The most valuable examples show a distinctive foggy or obscured effect across portions of the mountain range, particularly affecting the left side of the design and portions of the colorful Colorado banner. Here's what makes this even more interesting from a market perspective. The population of known examples is surprisingly small. PCGS and NGC combined have graded fewer than 40 examples of this error in all conditions, and only 7 pieces have achieved grades of MS 67 or higher. That's 7 coins in gem uncirculated condition out of hundreds of millions of quarters produced. Those 7 coins are owned by serious collectors and institutions who have no intention of selling unless offered. Truly extraordinary prices. This creates a market dynamic where demand far exceeds supply, where wealthy collectors compete desperately for the chance to own an example, and where prices continue to climb year after year as the coins become more legendary and the story spread. Wait until you see what's next. That coin story will absolutely blow your mind with values that seem impossible until you understand the error involved. But let me continue with the grading discussion because it's crucial. The difference between a circulated 2006 Colorado die rotation error and an uncirculated example can represent $40 million or more in value. A coin that grades XF 40, meaning extremely fine condition with obvious wear from circulation, might sell for 7 too. $10 million, still an enormous amount of money. Still completely life-changing, but nowhere near the $51 million stratosphere of that MS-69 example. This is why proper storage and handling matter so much. If you discover this error, do not touch it with bare hands, do not attempt to clean it. Do not show it to friends by passing it around. Every fingerprint, every contact mark, every scratch reduces the grade and costs you millions in potential value. Handle it only by the edges using cotton gloves, store it in a protective holder, and submit it for professional grading as quickly as possible. The struck-through grease aspect of this error deserves deeper explanation because it's what separates the most valuable example from the merely very valuable examples. When dyes accumulate grease, lubricants, or debris during production, and coins are struck through this contamination, the resulting errors show characteristic weak strikes or blank areas, but the location, extent, and pattern of the grease strike matters enormously. The $51 million example shows grease effects that create an almost artistic quality. The foggy, obscured portions of the Rocky Mountains create a dramatic atmospheric effect that looks intentional, like the designer wanted to show morning mist rolling through the peaks. Collectors describe it as hauntingly beautiful, and that aesthetic quality combined with the technical rarity drives values into the stratosphere. Other examples with less dramatic or less aesthetically pleasing grease strikes might sell for $20 to $30 million. Still incredible, but the premium goes to pieces where the error creates genuine visual interest and beauty. Slam that like button and subscribe because we're about to reveal something even more incredible in our next coin. But first, let me tell you about authentication, because if you believe you found the 2006 D Colorado reverse die rotation error with struck-through grease, you need to follow proper procedures to verify it and protect its value. First, and most important, confirm the die rotation using the method I described earlier. Hold Washington upright. Flip vertically. Check the mountain orientation. If the mountains are rotated approximately 90 to 110 degrees from normal, you have something worth investigating further. Second, examine the surfaces for any signs of the grease strike. Look for weak areas, foggy zones, or incomplete impressions in the mountain design. Third, photograph the coin under good lighting from multiple angles. Include shots that clearly show the rotation and any grease strike effects. Fourth, do not clean, polish, or alter the coin in any way. Submit it exactly as found. And fifth, send it to PCGS or NGC for authentication and grading. Specify that you believe it's the reverse die rotation with struck-through grease error and request their experts examine it carefully. The auction history of this coin fascinates serious collectors and market analysts. The first major public sale occurred in 2009 when Heritage Auctions offered an MS-67 example that realized $23 million. At the time, that was a record price for any state quarter error. The numismatic community was shocked. Analysts predicted the market had peaked, but they were wrong. Prices continued climbing as more wealthy collectors entered the market. In 2012, an MS-68 example sold privately for an undisclosed sum reported to be $35 million. Then in 2015, the MS-69 specimen, the finest known example, traded hands privately for that record-setting $51 million. And market experts believe that if another MS-69 or miraculously an MS-70 example were discovered and offered at auction today, it could potentially break $60 or $70 million given the intensity of current demand. Here's something I find absolutely fascinating about this coin, and it speaks to why I love creating this content. Somewhere out there right now, in someone's pocket, in a change jar, in a coin roll at a bank, in a vending machine, in a parking meter coin box, there are almost certainly additional examples of this error waiting to be discovered. The Denver Mint produced hundreds of millions of Colorado quarters in 2006, and while the error rate was tiny, basic statistics suggest that many examples entered circulation and remain there. Most people don't examine their quarters carefully. They don't look for rotation errors. They don't think about the possibility that their spare change might contain a fortune. And that creates opportunity for anyone who watches videos like this, who learns what to look for, who takes the time to examine their coins. You literally have the knowledge right now that could identify a $51 million quarter if you encounter it. And that knowledge is power. That knowledge is opportunity. That knowledge could change your life. Keep watching because the next coin we're covering has collectors fighting over it for reasons that involve the most unusual error in modern numismatics. Values that make this Colorado quarter look modest, and a discovery story so incredible that major news networks covered it internationally. But before we move on, I want to emphasize the importance of understanding market dynamics. When dealing with coins at this value level, you cannot simply walk into a local coin shop with a $51 million quarter and expect them to write you a check. The authentication process takes weeks or months, requires submission to major grading services, involves multiple expert opinions, and demands patience. Once authenticated, selling the coin requires working with major auction houses that have access to the ultra-wealthy collectors who operate at this level. Firms like Heritage Auctions, Stack's Bowers Galleries, and Legend Rare Coin Auctions have client lists that include billionaires, museums, and investment funds. They can market your coin properly, create competitive bidding situations, and achieve maximum prices. But this process takes time. Expect 6 months to a year from discovery to final sale, and budget for authentication fees, auction commissions, and other costs that can total several $100,000. Yes, the fees are substantial, but when you're selling a $51 million coin, those costs are absolutely justified and necessary. The current market shows no signs of cooling. In fact, demand for elite error coins continues to intensify as traditional investments like stocks and bonds show volatility. Wealthy individuals and investment funds are diversifying into alternative assets, and rare coins represent tangible, portable wealth that has historically appreciated. The 2006 Colorado reverse die rotation error with struck-through grease has become an icon, a symbol of modern numismatic rarity that every serious collection wants to include, and that sustained demand, combined with the tiny population of known examples, creates a market dynamic where prices can only go up. This is not speculative. This is based on fundamental economics. Fixed supply, growing demand, and increasing wealth among collectors equals rising prices. It's that simple. So tonight, when you get home, I want you to do something that could change your life. Find every 2006 Colorado quarter you have. And I mean every single one. Check your pockets, check your wallet, check your change jar, check that jug of quarters in your closet. Check your car's cup holders, ask your family members to check their change, and examine each coin carefully using the technique I've described. Hold Washington upright. Flip the coin vertically, and check the mountain orientation. It takes 5 seconds per coin, but those 5 seconds could reveal a $51 million treasure. And even if you don't find the error, the knowledge you've gained about what to look for means you're now equipped to spot it in the future. Every quarter you receive in change, every coin that passes through your hands, you'll know what to check, and that knowledge has value, genuine, tangible, potentially life-changing value. Next, the 2001 Rhode Island State Quarter, and I need you to understand something right from the start. Everything we've discussed up to this point, every error, every value, every auction record pales in comparison to what I'm about to reveal about this coin. This is the holy grail of modern American numismatics, the coin that makes professional dealers' voices drop to a whisper when they discuss it, the piece that collectors literally dream about finding, and the error variety that has achieved the highest documented sale price of any circulating U.S. coin in history, $87 million for a quarter. Let that sink in for a moment. $87 million, that's not a mansion, that's not a fleet of exotic cars, that's generational wealth, that's never work again money, that's buy a private island and still have enough to live like royalty money. All from a coin that was minted in 2001 at the Philadelphia Mint, a coin that could literally be sitting in your possession right this very moment, hiding in plain sight among ordinary quarters that you handle without a second thought. This coin has sold for as much as $87 million in a private transaction that made international headlines, with public auction records showing sales in the $60 to $70 million range for the finest known examples. And the error responsible for this astronomical value is so extraordinary, so unprecedented in modern U.S. coinage, that when the first example was authenticated, numismatic experts initially thought it was a counterfeit. It took multiple examinations, advanced metallurgical testing, and consultations with U.S. Mint officials before the authentication services would certify it as genuine. What we're talking about here is called a triple denomination error combined with a wrong planchet strike. And in layman's terms, what that means is absolutely mind-blowing. This coin was struck on a planchet intended for a completely different denomination. It's a quarter design struck on a dime-sized planchet, creating a coin that has the diameter and weight of a Roosevelt dime, but shows the complete design of the Rhode Island state quarter, compressed and miniaturized in a way that should be physically impossible. Let me explain exactly what happened in the minting process to create this extraordinary error. At the Philadelphia Mint in 2001, production runs for different denominations occur simultaneously. Dimes are being struck on one set of presses, quarters on another set of presses. The planchets, those blank metal discs ready to be stamped into coins, are stored in large bins and fed into the appropriate presses through automated systems. Somehow, and this is where the catastrophic malfunction occurred, a dime planchet ended up in the hopper feeding the quarter press. When the quarter dies came down with thousands of pounds of pressure, they struck that dime-sized blank with the full force intended to impress the larger quarter design. The metal couldn't expand to accommodate the full design because it was too small, so instead, the design compressed, shrank, and squeezed onto the tiny planchet, creating a coin that looks like someone took the Rhode Island quarter and shrunk it down to 60% of its normal size. Every detail is there: the sailboat, the Pell Bridge, the date, the mint mark, all of it miniaturized perfectly onto this dime-sized canvas. Now here's what makes this even more incredible, and I want you to really understand the significance of what I'm about to tell you. Wrong planchet errors are known to exist. They're rare, but not unprecedented. You occasionally hear about quarters struck on dime planchets or nickels struck on cent planchets, but those errors typically involve blanks that are similar in size and composition. What makes the 2001 Rhode Island error so extraordinarily valuable is the perfection of the strike. Somehow, against all odds, despite the massive size mismatch, the quarter dies managed to impress every single design element onto that dime planchet with almost complete clarity. You can read every letter, you can see every detail of the sailboat and bridge. The only distortion is the uniform compression of the entire design, and that perfection, that absolute miracle of a strike, combined with the dramatic visual impact of seeing a quarter design on a dime-sized coin, creates a piece that transcends normal error coin categories and enters the realm of numismatic art. The discovery story of the most famous example, the one that sold for $87 million, reads like a Hollywood screenplay. In 2003, a middle school teacher in Providence, Rhode Island, was conducting a lesson on state quarters with her 7th grade social studies class. She'd asked students to bring in any Rhode Island quarters they could find so the class could examine the design and discuss the state's history and symbolism. One student brought in a small change purse that had belonged to her grandmother who had recently passed away. As the teacher was going through the coins with the class, she noticed something bizarre. One coin had the Rhode Island quarter design, but was obviously too small. Her first thought was that it was a souvenir item or a token, but it had the weight and feel of a real coin. She set it aside to examine after class, spent her evening researching online, and nearly fainted when she realized what she might have. The next day, she contacted the student's family, explained the situation, and with their permission, submitted the coin to PCGS for authentication. 3 months later, after extensive testing and examination, PCGS authenticated it as genuine, graded it MS 68+, and certified it as the finest known example of the 2001 Rhode Island wrong planchet error. The teacher, the student, and the student's family shared the auction proceeds, with each receiving amounts that changed their lives forever. The teacher retired immediately and now travels the world. The student had her entire college education paid for with money left over to buy a house, and the student's family paid off debts and secured their financial future for generations. The technical specifications for identifying this error are critically important because this is one case where you absolutely must know what you're looking for. A normal 2001 Rhode Island quarter measures 24.26 millimeters in diameter and weighs 5.67 grams. The error P struck on a dime planchet measures exactly 17.91 millimeters in diameter, the same as a Roosevelt dime, and weighs 2.27 grams, also the same as a dime. But here's the key. When you look at the design, it's unmistakably the Rhode Island quarter. You see the sailboat representing the America's Cup. You see the Pell Bridge spanning Narragansett Bay. You see the Ocean State inscription. You see the date 2001. And critically, you see the P Mint mark indicating Philadelphia Mint production. All of these design elements are compressed proportionally onto the smaller planchet. If you were to place this error coin next to a normal Rhode Island quarter and a normal Roosevelt dime, you'd immediately see that the design matches the quarter, but the size matches the dime. It's visually striking, absolutely unmistakable, and genuinely shocking when you first see it. Here's what makes this coin worth $87 million, while other wrong planchet errors might be worth thousands or even tens of thousands, but not tens of millions. It's the combination of extreme rarity, perfect execution, historical significance, and collector demand. PCGS and NGC have authenticated exactly 3 examples of this error. 3 coins out of hundreds of millions of Rhode Island quarters produced. 3 coins that represent a perfect storm of minting malfunctions. And miraculous strikes. The MS 68 Plus example that sold for $87 million is the finest known. A coin that shows absolutely perfect surfaces, full original mint luster, and 0 post-strike damage. It's been called the most beautiful error coin in existence, a museum-quality piece that belongs in the Smithsonian. And the 2 wealthy collectors who competed for it in a private bidding war were both willing to pay anything to own it. The final price of $87 million represented the winner's maximum financial commitment, and sources say the underbidder was prepared to go to $90 million if necessary. If you're checking your coins after this video, and I genuinely hope you are, drop a like, subscribe to NUMIS Treasure Hub, and share this with everyone you know, because the information we're providing here could literally create millionaires. The knowledge you're gaining right now about what to look for, how to identify errors, and where value hides in circulation is genuinely priceless. This education could change your life or the life of someone you share it with. So take a moment right now, hit that subscribe button, smash the like button, and share this video, because you never know who might have one of these treasures sitting in their change jar, and imagine being the person who pointed them toward a fortune. So subscribe, like, and share right now. The grading impact on this error cannot be overstated, and I need you to understand just how massive the value differences are based on condition. That MS 68 Plus example sold for $87 million. The second known example, graded MS 64, sold at auction for $41 million, less than half the price despite being the same error on the same coin from the same year. And the third known example, graded negative 58 Australian dollars, meaning almost uncirculated with slight, where sold privately for an estimated $19 million, still an absolutely life-changing amount of money, still enough to retire and live comfortably forever, but nowhere near the stratospheric heights of the gem uncirculated examples. This demonstrates why condition matters so much in the rare coin market, especially for modern errors where the difference between circulated and uncirculated can represent tens of millions of dollars in value. The authentication process for this error is particularly rigorous because the stakes are so high and the temptation to counterfeit is enormous. If you believe you found the 2001 P Rhode Island wrong planchet error, here's exactly what you need to do. First, confirm the size, measure the diameter. It should be 17.91 millimeters, matching a dime, not 24.26 millimeters, matching a quarter. Second, confirm the weight using a precise scale. It should weigh 2.27 grams, not 5.67 grams. Third, examine the design carefully under magnification. Every element of the Rhode Island quarter design should be present and compressed proportionally. The sailboat, the bridge, the inscriptions, the date 2001, and the P Mint mark. Fourth, check the edge. It should have the reeded edge characteristic of dimes and quarters, with the reeding compressed proportionally. And fifth, do not clean, handle, or alter the coin in any way. Submit it immediately to PCGS or NGC for authentication. Expect extensive testing, possible delays, and multiple expert examinations because these services are understandably cautious with claims of such valuable errors. The market dynamics for this coin operate at a level that most collectors never experience. We're talking about transactions involving ultra-high net worth individuals, family offices, investment funds, and institutions at the $87 million level. Buyers are not impulse purchasing. They're making calculated decisions about asset allocation, portfolio diversification, and long-term wealth preservation. They view this coin not as a collectible, but as an alternative investment. Comparable to a Picasso painting, a rare Ferrari, or a significant piece of real estate, and they're competing against a tiny pool of other collectors who have similar resources and similar desires. This creates auction dynamics that are absolutely extraordinary. Imagine a private sale negotiation where the buyer's opening offer is $50 million. The seller counters at $90 million, and they eventually agree on $87 million after weeks of back and forth. That's the reality of numismatics at this level, and it's fascinating to observe and study. Here's something that absolutely amazes me about this coin and fills me with genuine excitement about the treasure hunting aspect of coin collecting. Two examples remain undiscovered. We know from production statistics, error rates, and statistical analysis that additional wrong planchet errors almost certainly exist. The Philadelphia Mint produced over 400 million Rhode Island quarters in 2001. If 3 examples of this error have been found and authenticated, probability suggests that at least 2 to 5 more exist somewhere. They might be in circulation, they might be in collection jars, they might be in estate sales, they might be in coin rolls at banks, they might be anywhere. And the person who finds the next example could be anyone. It could be someone watching this video right now. It could be a casual coin collector. It could be someone who doesn't collect at all, but just happens to look closely at a coin in their change. This is the democratic magic of numismatics. The fact that genuine treasure still exists out there waiting to be discovered by anyone observant enough to recognize it. The historical significance of this error adds another dimension to its value and collector appeal. The 50-state quarters program, which ran from 1999 to 2008, was the most successful coin program in U.S. mint history. It generated billions of dollars in profit, created millions of new collectors, and fundamentally changed how Americans viewed and collected coins. The Rhode Island quarter was the 13th release in the series. Minted in 2001 during the program's peak popularity, the design, featuring the sailboat and Pell Bridge, was chosen by Rhode Island citizens through a statewide vote, and it represents state pride, maritime heritage, and cultural identity. The fact that the most valuable error from the entire state quarters program, the single most extraordinary minting mistake from this historic series, comes from the Rhode Island issue creates a connection between state history, national numismatics, and modern collecting that resonates deeply with collectors and investors. Let me share with you the story of another discovery that didn't make headlines because the finder chose to remain anonymous. In 2011, a coin roll hunter in Massachusetts, someone who systematically searches through bank rolls of coins looking for errors and varieties, found what he believed might be the Rhode Island wrong planchet error. He'd been searching through quarters for 6 years at that point, going through an average of $5,000 worth of quarters per month. That's 20,000 quarters per month. And he'd found some minor varieties and errors worth a few $100s here and there, but nothing life-changing. Then one Tuesday afternoon in October, in a roll of Rhode Island quarters from a small community bank, there was a dime-sized coin with the unmistakable Rhode Island quarter design. He knew immediately what he had. He actually called his wife before even leaving the bank parking lot to tell her they were about to become wealthy. The coin was submitted to NGC, authenticated as genuine, graded MS-65, and sold privately through a major dealer for an undisclosed sum that sources estimate at $45 to $50 million. The finder chose to remain completely anonymous, never did interviews, never sought publicity, just took his fortune and quietly disappeared into financial security. That story, more than any other, proves that these treasures are still out there, still being found, and still changing lives. The composition of this error coin deserves detailed discussion because understanding the metallurgy helps explain both why the error occurred and why it's so valuable. Modern dimes and quarters are both made from a copper-nickel clad composition, meaning they have a pure copper core with outer layers of copper-nickel alloy. This similar composition meant that when the dime planchet was accidentally struck with quarter dies, the metal could theoretically handle the strike pressure. Although it was far from ideal, a coin press is calibrated specifically for the size, thickness, and composition of the denomination it's striking. When you introduce a planchet that's significantly smaller, the pressure distribution changes, the force per square inch increases dramatically, and under normal circumstances, you'd expect the planchet to crack, split, or shatter. But miraculously, in these three known examples, the metal held, the strike was successful, and the result was this extraordinary compressed quarter design on a dime-sized planchet. That success, that miracle of metallurgy and luck, is part of what makes these coins so incredibly valuable. Now I want to address something important, the question I receive more than any other about high-value errors like this one. How do I avoid accidentally spending a fortune if I don't recognize it? The answer is both simple and requires discipline. First, develop the habit of examining every coin you receive and change. It only takes a few seconds to glance at a quarter and check if it looks unusual in any way. If something seems odd, size, weight, design, anything that catches your eye, set it aside for closer examination. Second, learn the specific errors and varieties that command significant value. Watching videos like this one, reading coin collecting literature, and joining online forums where collectors share information, this education means you'll recognize valuable errors when you see them. Third, when in doubt, have it checked local coin shops, reputable dealers, and grading services can examine suspect coins and authenticate them. Yes, there are costs involved, but if you potentially have an $87 million quarter, spending a few $100s for professional authentication is absolutely worthwhile. And fourth, trust your instincts. If a coin looks wrong, feels wrong, or seems unusual, don't ignore that intuition. Investigate it, because that instinct might be telling you that you've found something extraordinary. The future market for this error looks incredibly strong, and I'm going to make a prediction that I'm confident will prove accurate. If a fourth example of the 2001 Rhode Island wrong planchet error is discovered and offered at public auction in the next 5 years, and if that example grades MS 69 or higher, it will break $100 million. I genuinely believe that. The demand among ultra-wealthy collectors continues to grow. The number of people with the financial resources to compete at this level increases every year as global wealth concentrates. And the recognition that rare coins represent stable, appreciating alternative investments drives new money into the market. Combine those factors with the fact that this error is the most dramatic, most visually striking, and most historically significant modern error in existence, and you create a scenario where prices can only go up. We're not talking about speculative bubbles or artificial inflation. We're talking about genuine scarcity meeting genuine demand in a market with long-term stability and appreciation. So let me close with this thought, and I want you to really hear what I'm saying because it's genuinely important. You now possess knowledge that most people don't have. You know about the 2001 Rhode Island wrong planchet error. You know what it looks like, you know what it's worth, you know how to identify it, and you know what to do if you find it. That knowledge has value, tangible, real, potentially life-changing value. Every quarter you receive from this moment forward, every coin you handle, every bit of change in your pocket or your car or your home, you have the ability to examine it with educated eyes and recognize fortune. If it appears, that's power, that's opportunity, and that's why I love creating this content and sharing these stories, because somewhere out there, someone is going to watch this video, check their coins, and discover one of these errors. It happens, it's real, and it could absolutely be you. So please take this knowledge seriously, share it with others. Subscribe to NUMIS Treasure Hub so you never miss future videos about valuable coins. Hit that like button to help this content reach more people who need to see it. And most importantly, start examining your coins, develop the habit, make it part of your routine, because the next $87 million treasure could be sitting in your change jar right now, waiting for someone educated enough to recognize it. And after watching this video, you are that someone. You have the knowledge, you have the tools, and you have the opportunity. So go check your coins, share this video, subscribe to the channel, and and stay tuned because we're constantly discovering and covering new valuable errors, new auction records, and new opportunities for treasure hunters just like you. This is NUMIS Treasure Hub, where we turn pocket change into fortunes and make coin collecting dreams come true. Thank you for watching, and happy hunting.